Do you like being the lord of the memes and building flexible characters that can fill gaps left in your party composition? Do you like being able to talk your way out of any situation and perhaps bring a little bit of a musical note to your party? Well, strum those lutes and ready those glutes, because today we're answering the question, why would I play Bard in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons? Hi everybody, my name is John from DM Shower Thoughts, where we find our best selves through gaming. So today we're looking at the unique mechanics of the Bard and evaluating the unique value it brings to the official 13 classes in 5th edition D&D. Bard is also a really fun class to examine because a lot of people have a very loaded notion on what it means to be a real Bard. I have friends that have never even played D&D that joke about memes they've seen about bards seducing dragons and getting into all sorts of other shenanigans. And while that's a perfectly valid way to roleplay a bard, as someone who's always getting into mischief, with these videos we're purely looking at the class from a mechanical progression. After all, you can build a taunt-spewing swashbuckler with a swashbuckler rogue, but if you play a bard, it's gonna feel very, very different. As always with this video series, I'm going to pick 5 distinct mechanics that define the Bard's style of gameplay. And at the end of the video, we're also going to go over some rough spots that might come up while you're trying to play this class. Now, one last thing before we dive in. Bard is the first class in this series that's a full spellcaster. And as anyone who's played one of these classes knows, spellcasting and the spell list of a certain character class is probably the most important and defining feature of its playstyle. However, there are plenty other resources and advice out on the internet that you can research on your own for the individual evaluations of spells. One such video is Dabby Chappie's breakdown of the Bard spells, which you can find in the cards above. So to save time, what I'm going to be doing is commenting on the general trends that you find on the Bard's spell list, as well as name a few standout spells I've seen work particularly effectively in the games I've played and DM'd for. And with that out of the way, let's dive into the Bard's major mechanics. Major mechanic number 1 is the Bard's skill proficiencies. While a rogue has the unique feature of being able to pick 4 skill proficiencies from its class list instead of 2, meaning that for a rogue, at minimum, they're starting with 6 skill proficiencies, a Bard gets to start with 3, but they don't have a class list. They can pick from 3 out of any of the skill proficiencies on the character sheet. Now, because of this, the Bard can pick up skill proficiencies that they know are going to be useful, but aren't covered by their teammates. Now, I've seen a lot of players take proficiency in the charisma skills, because they imagine their Bard being a smooth talker that can talk their way out of any situation. However, purely from a mechanical perspective, the Bard can pick up rare skill proficiencies and really fill in a lot of gaps. For example, they can pick up things like medicine proficiencies, or performance, or sleight of hand. And also, if you have another charisma character in the party, you can leave them to be the talker because their skill list is going to be a little more limited. I find that this starts to position the Bard as a character class perfect for veteran players that are willing to step into the roles that newer players may be a little nervous about. And in addition, because the Bard has such cultural baggage associated with it, of being more of a roleplay class, a veteran player can set the example of role-playing expectations at the table. This also combines well with the Bard's expertise features that it gets at 3rd and 10th level. Meaning, if there's a particular skill that you're finding a lot, or that speaks to the personality of your character, you know you're going to be excellent in those skill checks. Personally, I also like that the Bard gets its expertise a little bit later in its progression, because it means that a player can observe what skills are going to be more relevant to the tone of the campaign that the DM is running, and they can choose to take an expertise in those relevant skills. For example, survival may not be a relevant skill in a court intrigue game, and performance may not work really well if you're running a dungeon crawl. There's a versatility in this class's progression that allows it to pivot its build mid-leveling that's pretty unique. And that brings us to major mechanic number 2, which is Bardic Inspiration. Gained at 1st level, right at character creation, Bardic Inspiration is a targeted support mechanic that allows other party members to be better versions of themselves. After all, a second level paladin is always going to be weaker than a second level paladin that has a Bardic Inspiration die. At the end of each long rest, a bard has a pool of inspiration die that it can gift to other party members, equal to its charisma modifier. It can give out one of these inspirations as a bonus action. And that inspiration die can then be added to any attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. And depending on the subclass that you picked for your bard, there might be other uses as well. For example, a lore bard has cutting words as a reaction, meaning that it can expend an inspiration die to take away from an enemy's roll. And Valor Bard makes it so that you can add that inspiration die to damage rolls instead of just attack rolls. Now, an ally can only have one inspiration die at a time. However, as the bard levels up, that die will both increase in size and it'll start to recharge on short rests instead of just long rests. The fact that the bard has a go-to bonus action feature is nice, because oftentimes spellcasters can feel as if they don't have a full action economy. There's a tiny little rule in the PHB that says if you cast a spell as a bonus action, the only other spell that you can cast with your action has to be a cantrip. What it means is that usually a lot of spellcasters on their turn can use their action to do one big spell, but they don't feel as fulfilled as, say, a rogue or a monk that's constantly attacking and using its bonus action for an additional thing. And of course, that bridges us to major mechanic number 3, which is the Bard's Spellcasting feature. Now, when I say that a Bard is a full caster, what I mean is that it gets a full spell slot progression from 1st through 9th level spellcasting. If you examine the trends in the Bardic spell list, they tend to be support, healing, and control spells. Now, it's not necessarily the most versatile or powerful healing spells in the game, but a well-timed healing word can mean the difference between life and death for an ally. The other thing to note is a lot of the most distinct bard spells tend to be single target, focused on wisdom saves, and require concentration. Some of them can even deal a little bit of damage, but the bard shouldn't really be relied on as like the damage per round kind of character. However, bards are excellent for setting up your allies to do their jobs better, as well as making the enemies worse at their job. Now, I'm not going to go into every single spell, its mechanics, and its value relative to the Bard's entire list, but I am going to name a few spells that I've seen work particularly effectively at tables that I've DM'd for and tables that I've been a player for. These spells include Vicious Mockery, Dissonant Whispers, Healing Word, Fairy Fire, Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Thunderwave, Heat Metal, Suggestion, Hypnotic Pattern, Plant Growth, Speak with Plants, Mislead, Synaptic Static, True Seeing, and Power Word Heal. Now, that's not to say that you have to pick those spells in order to create an effective bard character. Those are just spells that I have distinct memories of that both functioned well and created a unique flavor for the character that casted them. And the coolest thing about Bardic spellcasting is that it has enough utility that there are plenty of spells that are appropriate for combat, but also a lot of spells that work well in exploration and social interaction. So major mechanic number 4 is the Bard's Jack of all trades. Oh, look, they put a name to it. Jack of all trades is kind of cool, because in a way it's the opposite of the rogue's reliable talent. For every ability check a bard gets to make where it doesn't get to add its proficiency bonus, it gets to add half of its proficiency bonus rounded down. This comes up in a lot of interesting and unexpected ways. For example, there's the whole, I'm not proficient in this skill and I'm probably not very good at it, but let's give it a try anyway. But there are a lot of ability checks that normally don't call for a proficiency bonus. And these include initiative rolls, rolls for Dispel Magic, and rolls for Counterspell. Because of this, oftentimes a bard can pull off things that it's not necessarily built to do, which only adds to its reputation of kind of a shenanigan class. However, that's not to say that a bard is completely based on luck, because now we have major mechanic number 5, arguably the most powerful mechanic the bard has, which is Magical Secrets. Now, Magical Secrets is something you get later in the bard progression at 10th and 18th level, but if you pick a lore bard, you can also get it at 6th. With Magical Secrets, a bard can pick any 2 spells of a level that it has spell slots for, and those spells count as bard spells for it. Now, if you combine that with the freedom of its proficiency bonuses, with Jack of all trades and with expertise, this makes Bard arguably the most flexible and versatile class that you can build for. With this, you can pick up spells that the party may really need, but nobody has the class that has access to them. And I'm talking about spells that are really specific, like Healing Spirit, Destructive Wave, and also those utility spells that are just generally good to know, like Counterspell and Fireball. Also, at 18th level, the Bard has access to 9th level spells, meaning that with Magical Secrets, a Bard can pick up spells like Wish and True Resurrection. It's a great way to fill out the Bard's spell list, especially since at 18th level, you've had 18 levels to see what the party really needs and what gaps still need to be filled. So in summary, Bards are incredibly flexible characters that can pivot mid-build to adapt to the game style that they're playing in. It's an excellent character class for veteran players that really like to fine-tune the mechanics of their build, as well as being okay kind of playing second fiddle and allowing a newer player to take center stage as like the premier damage dealer, or like the hero of the story. Not to mention they have a full action economy that escapes a lot of spellcasters in 5th edition. Now, like any class, it is going to have its rough spots, so here are a few quick tips to smooth over playing as a bard. Now, even though bards have this reputation as being mischievous and maybe a little obnoxious, you want to remember that you're playing with other people at the table. This means you don't want to be too obnoxious that you might accidentally be ruining the game for somebody else. And I'm not saying to avoid playing flamboyantly or over the top or with a ridiculous accent. I'm just suggesting that you be mindful of everybody else's comfort levels at the table. And you want to make sure that everybody gets their chance to speak and roleplay as well. Now, another rough spot, you're not gonna be the damage dealer. You'll definitely have your time to shine, but it's definitely going to be through things like supporting your teammates or setting off a debuff on an enemy. A lot of times the damage might just feel piddly, even at a really high level. For example, by the time you're a 17th level caster, your Vicious Mockery is going to be doing 4d4 psychic damage. And that means you might be doing as little as 4 damage. And on average, probably about 10 to 12. This is at the same time that wizards are going to be casting Meteor Swarm, and other classes are going to be doing Power Word Kill. So your 10 points of Vicious Mockery psychic damage may feel really kind of piddly in comparison. And the last thing is, Bard is excellent for players that are also mindful of the party composition and the team's mechanics around the table. You can notice each time your party says something like, "Oh, I wish we had a survival proficiency," or "a medicine proficiency would really come in handy about now." Your bard can also sometimes be kind of like a world traveler, and they can pick up a lot of kind of odd skills that can define their character. And last but not least, bards have this reputation of being the face of the party, but 5th edition is kind of flooded with charisma-based characters right now. It might be likely, even if you pick a class at random, that the party has another charisma-heavy character in it. And it goes a long way with building rapport with your fellow players if you allow another charisma character to be really good at the talking, and you might even support their ability to be successful in that role-playing sphere. So now I want to know your thoughts. What's your experience with bards at your table? Is there something major that I've missed that's made a huge impact in the campaigns that you've been a part of? I'd love to hear what you have to say, so make sure to comment down below, hit that subscribe button, and ring the little notification bell. And remember, game responsibly. Bye-bye now.